Hello, everybody. This is Dylan Miller here, coming to you from some sunny part in Florida. Today, I wanted to talk about purchasing land in Florida. Purchasing land in Florida is a lot different than other places. There's a lot of different things to look out for when you're coming into Florida, looking at a piece of land, or even buying a house in Florida. Today, I'm going to talk about 5 of the most important things you need to know when you're buying a piece of land in Florida. So let's go to the first reason here. First thing to know when you're buying land in Florida is flood zones. So a lot of people don't know this, but all of Florida is in a flood zone. Some flood zones are safer, some are less safe. I'm just going to go ahead and talk to you about a few of the flood zones, even though there's about 13 in total in Florida. Some of the ones that you're going to see the most are X, X500, A, AE, and V and VE. X and X500 are going to be on your safer side of flood zones. X is beyond 500 years. It's going to flood less than once every 500 years. X500, it's expected to flood about once every 500 years. And then you go down into AE, where it's expected to actually flood once every 100 years. So if you're taking out a mortgage on a home, the bank's going to look at that and say, there's a 26% chance of this house flooding on our 30-year mortgage. So most of the time they're going to require you to get flood insurance. So that's something very important to know if you're purchasing a house on some land that is in a flood zone of AE, A, VE, or V. Now you might be wondering why there's the different letters there. So AE is specifically, it has a base flood elevation determined. Just A doesn't have a base flood elevation determined. And then you have V and VE, which also include waves. You're going to get V and VE when you're closer to the ocean, more chance of waves, and that is also in danger of flooding. So remember, X and X500 are your two safest. A, AE, V, VE are generally more risky, and your lender, if you are using one, is going to require you to carry flood insurance. Now let's jump into our second point. Now, on to point number 2, we have wetlands. Now, you might be asking yourself, didn't we just talk about flood zones? I mean, what's the difference? There is a big difference between flood zones and national wetlands here in Florida. So for national wetlands, they have their own separate map. And I'm going to show you a picture right here of a snapshot of a map that has flood zones. You'll see usually circle shapes, and those are rough estimates of where the wetlands are going to be. Now, like I said, those are just rough estimates. It is highly recommended, especially if you see a map like this with a bunch of wetlands around, that you also get your wetland delineation. Usually you can go to an environmental company, you get your wetland delineation, they stake out exactly where that wetland is, because you do not want to be caught in a situation where you buy a piece of land, you pay for all the architectural drawings, you're all ready to pull permits and build. You go to pull the permits and they tell you, we can't approve this. There's wetlands on this land. I've seen it happen before, and I don't want it to happen to you. So make sure you cover yourself. Get your wetland delineation, especially in the neighborhoods with a lot of wetlands. That way you are safe and secure to build when you are ready to do so. Now, on to our next point. Point number 3, we have sinkholes. Sinkholes is a big deal to look for in Florida. There's also another map for sinkholes right here that I'm going to show you. In this neighborhood, you can see that there's blue triangles and then there's red triangles. The blue triangles indicate to you that those are repaired sinkholes. That means there was a sinkhole identified on that property, and then a company came in. Usually they'll do some underpinning or even pump concrete in there to repair it, and that's how they get that blue mark. Now, seeing the red mark, that is an unrepaired sinkhole. That can affect the value by hundreds of thousands of dollars to a house or any piece of land. So that is a big deal to look out for when you're purchasing land or a home in Florida. You have the sinkhole map. You can usually find it accessible in every county, so that's something to look for. So, on to our next point. Oh, don't get caught like me, unaware of your surroundings. You have to know this next point for sure. Point number 4, zoning codes. If I sat here and tried to list off all the zoning codes there are in Florida, I wouldn't be able to. I would just fail miserably. There are so many different zoning codes that let you know what you're allowed to do on your property. You might say, oh, it's a free country. Too bad. There are still restrictions in every part of Florida as to what you can and can't do. You, of course, have your residential zoning codes, which even within the residential sector, there are still many codes for different residential properties. Then you have your agricultural. It gives you an opportunity to have maybe farm animals, depending on the amount of land you have. And then you have your commercial land. So let's say you bought a piece of land, you're planning on putting a business there, but that property is not zoned commercial, then you can't build commercial there. This restricts people from, let's say, having a business right next to a personal residence. So when you're buying that piece of property, you want to make sure to be aware of the zoning codes. Now, let's go on to our last and final tip. So that brings us to our fifth and final point for buying land in Florida: setbacks. Setbacks are so important when you're looking at a piece of land with a thought of building a house or building any sort of structure on it, because you have to adhere to those setbacks. Setbacks are a set amount of distance that you must be off either the front, the side, or the back in order for your building to be in compliance. Now, these setbacks can change from zone to zone, city to city, all across the state. Setbacks could be as little as 10 feet, up to 50, up to 100, and beyond. So you need to know this if you come into buying a piece of land. Let's say it's a small piece of land, you want a big house on it. If it's not fitting those setback requirements, you might try to go submit those plans to the permit office, and they'll deny you right away because you don't meet the setback limits. So this is why you go to your county site or talk to your realtor about the setbacks before you buy that piece of land. So that's our 5 things to look out for when purchasing property in Florida. You have to look out for these 5 things, but there's also more and beyond. I'm Dylan Miller with Sandstone, powered by Impact Realty. If you need help purchasing that land in Florida, anywhere in Florida, I specialize in Hernando County. I would be glad to answer any questions you have. Go ahead, click the link in my bio, set up a phone call, and I'd be glad to help. Thank you and have a wonderful day.